As you can see from all around you in Crete, we have a huge production of olives and olive trees on this island. They're very concentrated all over, from here to the other end, from north to south of Crete. Everywhere you will go, you can't escape this tree. The production itself of olive oil in Crete comes to about 5% of the world's production. This is huge production. And so with this production comes a huge history. This is not a new cultivation. In any kind of historical site you visit here in Crete, you will always see traces of the olive branch. Here in this village they found carbonized olives since the Neolithic times, and these findings are in the Archaeological Museum of Chania. So it's something that has been with us for many, many, many years, many generations. We have trees that date back 2,000, 3,000 years. And this production, the main problem that we have here in Crete is that despite this production, despite this history, we just haven't been able to brand our olive oil as much as we should have. So it exists in the market, just not as Cretan olive oil. So you have Cretan olive oil that has been branded under different labels. This is why, despite the history, despite the production that we have on this island, you don't really hear about Cretan olive oil. But it has been playing a very important role in the olive oil production industry in the whole Mediterranean. The consumption of olive oil here in Crete comes to about 30 liters per person per year. It's a lot. And so when there was a big study, the Seven Nations study that happened about 50 years ago, from which the idea of a Mediterranean diet came out, and they came to Crete and they did their study, and they found that Crete, along with Sardinia, were one of the regions that had the best heart conditions. They had the best lifespan. They were very healthy people, and they were shocked to find this because in their studies they found that 30% of their diet was fat. So they were saying, how is it possible that 30% of their diet is fat and they're still so healthy? The reality of that was that the fat is 100% really good quality olive oil, especially the one that was produced a long time ago with the stone mills, cold pressed oils that were also very full of antioxidants and vitamins. Welcome to our olive trees. Here we have a Koroneiki olive tree. You can see the size of the olive is quite small in comparison to the big Kalamata olives that usually Greece is famous for. The Koroneiki variety, it's very small olives. We have this olive tree here. This is the main variety all over Crete because it's the one that best survived the rough conditions that we have on this island. We have a very big drought on the island. We have poor soil, rough landscaping. So this variety was one of the toughest ones that was able to survive all these conditions. And some of the trees that we have in this area date back to 2,000, 3,000 years old, and they're still there, still producing to this day. The olive trees that have been passed on in the family Dimitriadis, which is our family from the Biolea company, have been in our family for about 5 generations now. Some of them date over 200 years old, and the youngest fields that we have been dated to, we were planting them when I was little, about 20 years now that they're growing. What's specific about this variety is depending on when you're harvesting, when you're producing it. We choose to harvest this olive tree when it's still green, the olive, still a little bit unripe, which means that maybe you're going to get a little bit less quantity, but you're going to get more fresher aromas, green flavors, green grass, green almonds, and things like this. Our olive trees have been organic the last 20 years since my father took over the land from my grandfather. So we have been certified. We were one of the first contracts to become organic in this area. And beyond being organic, a big part of what our philosophy is about as a company is to be as sustainable as possible. So what we do beyond just being organic certified is We don't irrigate the trees. It's all arid farming. We're not plowing the field. And of course, we're not adding chemicals. So as much as possible, we want to keep this philosophy to keep everything simple, and as much as possible to protect the environment. And at the same time, this protection is going to reward you in quality as well. So maybe you're again not having the same, you're not having a big quantity from the olive trees, but because the olive trees are stressing during the summer without water, you're going to have more concentrated aromas and flavors inside the olive oil, and you're going to have, scientists have proven that when the tree stresses and it's an arid farming, you have much more antioxidants inside the olive oil. It's much more healthy for you. So over here is the beautiful village of Roca, which is our view from our mill, from our estate. And it used to be a very ancient civilization right on the top of the cliff. And after they rebuilt a more modern village right underneath, in Roca, every full moon of August, they have a beautiful concert here with classical music. It's organized by the local government of Kisamu, and it's just beautiful. You sit down on the side of the mountain and you listen to classical music, and it's a beautiful, beautiful concert. So welcome to Biolea. Our factory here has, our family here has been here for many generations, producing olive oil. But since my father has taken over the company, we were able to build these facilities here. The main philosophy of our company is really to produce a very good quality olive oil with the least amount of processing involved, and at the same time to keep everything as sustainable as possible towards the environment. For this reason, as we are in a single estate, we, from the actual olive tree, the olive harvest, the production, the bottling, the marketing is all done by our family. We take extra care and we owe it to our final consumer, and we have responsibility to take care in each one of these steps to make everything and make sure we have a very good quality in all these stages. The basic idea is really to just keep everything simple. So in the field, we talked about how we don't really do anything in the field. We don't plow, we don't irrigate, we don't add chemicals. In our production facility, it's the same exact idea. We just want to process the olives as naturally as possible, and the main way we were able to do so was going backwards in tradition, going to the traditional stone mill and press, and modernizing it so that we have today's food standards. This process was the best way that we could capture the simplicity of the old methods, and then also some more sanitary methods that they're using nowadays to bring out a very naturally extracted oil, which is also full of health benefits, and it also has a very low impact on the environment. So basically all we're doing is taking olives that we've cultivated very simply, crush them into a stone mill, and press them to get the juice out. It's that simple. It just takes much more time, much more effort, because really this method, it's very slow, it's very labor intensive. You're not going to get as much olive oil from it, but at the end of the day, you've done so in such a simple way, and you've gone so slow, and you've taken care so much of your olive oil that it comes out full of health benefits, full of aromas, and full of flavors. And that's the goal at the end of the day, is to have a really nice product and to be confident that you're offering to your consumers something that's produced in an ethical way, and with care and love, a good quality in the end. And my father, he was the first one who decided to come here and make a business out of everything. So he spent a lot of years in Canada, where he also met my mom. And when me and my brother were 3 and 5, we decided to come back here, and he took over the land, and his basic idea was let's make a really good olive oil from our own tree, so it's a single estate olive oil, and try to find a way to make it in a way that's very simple with the least amount of processing involved, so you get a really good pure quality, a natural quality to it, and find a process to make it that's also very sustainable towards the environment. So the one way that, there was many studies that were coming out at that time that he did a lot of research. The one study that came out back then when he was making a decision about 25 years ago was a study that came out from MAIC, the Agronomic Institute of Chania, and it said that it was comparing the traditional stone mill method with the modern one, showing how different they were and how much more preserved the health benefits were with the traditional process. And so this is where it clicked to him, and he decided, I'm going to invest in the traditional stone mill and press. So in a time when everybody in Crete was going industrial and processing and trying to get into this bulk idea of producing fast and just focusing on the quantity, he was the one who decided to go backwards in technology, go to the simpler method with less production, and to focus on the quality and the sustainability of everything. So many people thought my father was crazy in the beginning when we first started. He was very more open-minded than most people around here, but yeah, he decided to do it, and finally we got everything and modernized everything so that everything is certified, because of course we're talking about the traditional process, but you can't have the donkey pushing the stones around like in the old days. It had to all change. It was a big project to modernize all the machines and bring them up to today's food standards. So once we had that done, then we built our market slowly, and now we're at a place where it's working very well. So this is the whole concept of the family. So we'll explain the process, how it's happening. So we'll go through the factories. We have about 3,000 trees all throughout this village. The way we harvest is we lay nets around the trees, beat the branches with electronic beaters. So you have a rod that you hold steady, and it has two vibrating ends. So you flick the olives off the tree onto the nets, gather them, and bring them here to be washed before they get milled. It's very important to know what you're doing at the field, and you have to have a really good team that understands how to harvest the olives, because if the fruit themselves are not fresh, and if they're not intact, and if they're not, like if they're bruised or if they're cut or if they're stepped on, this makes a huge difference in the quality at the end. So we really want to make sure that the olives are brought within the same day, so they're very fresh and they're picked very carefully, let's say. So you can see that from the olives that come through. And the first step is to throw the olives in this container. They go up the conveyor belt here. There's a suction machine up there that takes out most of the leaves. Then they go into the washing machine and get shaken and washed with drinkable water. And then over here we have an electronic scale where we weigh everything and register the information of the batch, the number of the field, the date, the time, all the information that we need to keep a traceability of where it came from, where it will end up, so that we know what's going on with the olive oil. But this is a very standard way to just wash and clean the olives. So once we have that done, the olives get transferred inside where we start the milling process. So we have here 3 big stones rolling on top of one very big stone on the bottom, and the stones are made from granite stone. We had to cover the mill, we had to make some other changes to the whole process, but the process in itself here is exactly the same as in the old days. You're just crushing olives to make a paste, and after you're going to taste that paste and squish it to get the juice out. It's that simple. It just takes a little longer. So at this point, all we're doing is making a paste from the olives. So we add about 1,000 kilos olives into the stone mill, crush them until you reach a very thick consistency that kind of looks like an olive tapenade. It is the most critical stage of the whole process because you need to know exactly when to stop the stone mill so that you have the right thickness in order to be able to press the paste correctly. If it mills too long and you have a very runny paste and you try to press it, it will all splatter. So you have to be very certain about the consistency here. And the only way to tell when it's ready is by eye and experience. It's a skilled process. So to this day, my father is still the master of the mill. So he'll just look at the paste and he'll kind of make a call just from his gut how it's ready. So he'll just say, give it 2 minutes or give it 5 minutes. You know, you try to ask why, you know, like tell me and this and that, and we want to learn. And he'll say it will come with time. You know, you'll just know at some point. So once we know that the paste is ready and it's the right thickness that we need to mill, to press, we just open this door and the paste falls into the malaxer. So the malaxer is basically a big screw that keeps the paste mixing, and this mixing process will help the droplets of the oil start to form, and it will also just keep it moving until we can get all of this paste out and spread onto layers so that we can then press. Okay? So then we start pumping the paste to the next stage, right over here. Where we have to spread the paste onto these pressing filters. So these pressing filters, if you go to any olive museum, you'll see that it looks exactly the same as in the traditional process. They're woven exactly the same way, only they're made from a certified material, especially made for coming into contact with food nowadays. In the old days, it was made from cocoa fiber, goat hair, things that of course we can't use nowadays in food production. So the process also very similar to the traditional times. We add one filter onto this big disc. The paste comes out from here and spreads onto one filter. We add another filter, more paste goes on, another filter, more paste, another filter, until we have 10. And then the robot comes down, picks the 10 layers up and puts them onto the pressing cart. And so we stack another 10, another 10, another 10, until we have 100 filters stacked onto the cart. Then we have a full cart that's ready to be pressed. So then we just pull it out, there's big wheels under it, so we just pull it out and push it into the press right over here. We have 2 hydraulic presses. So we just open the pressure from there, and there's 4 pistons that slowly push the cart upwards. And it takes about 40 minutes to press one cart, but you have to add the pressure very gradually. If you add the pressure too fast, and here we're adding pressure up to 300 bar pressure, so it's a lot of pressure. Again, you will have all this paste splattering everywhere, so you have to squish it slowly, 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 so that you have the paste spreading equally and not spreading out. So basically what we're doing is really only through pressure, no heat, no single drop of water has been added through the whole process. You squish out all the juice and keep in between the filters all the solids. So you're separating the solids from the liquids. So after the press is done, what is left in between the filters, pits and skins and maybe some leaves, it becomes our solid waste, which when it's dried, it looks like this. It's pits and skins that basically they're like wood chips that we can burn in our furnace and create heating in the winter time. So it burns just like wood. And so we're recycling our own waste for the purpose of creating heating or creating energy, something like that, because we dry them naturally. If you wanted to dry them chemically, what happens is, if you're not doing it in the natural way that we're doing it, you sell the waste very cheaply to refineries where they dry the paste but also extract chemically whatever's left over in the actual paste by adding hexane, which is almost gasoline. Octane is what you put in the car. And so you wash out all the oil from the waste. You have to deodorize it, of course, decolorize it because it looks terrible, it's black, it doesn't look at all edible. And after all this process, it comes out like a thick, clear water with no smell, no taste, no anything. And then you add 10-15% olive oil to that, and it looks like olive oil, and you can sell it legally as olive oil. Or sometimes they're using fancy words like pure olive oil, which actually stands for purified olive oil. So we always give a little bit of a guideline as to how to choose an olive oil when you go to the supermarket. So the first rule is always to see the word virgin in front of olive oil. Virgin olive oil, you know it's 100% olive oil coming from 100% natural olives, and it's produced in a natural mechanical way without being chemically extracted. So virgin olive oil, you know that it's actually olive oil. And then if you're looking for a better quality and slowly going up in grades, you can go to an extra virgin, which basically means you have lower acidities, and you have no defects in aromas and flavors. You have to have an analysis that proves this, so it categorizes you into a better category. Beyond the extra virgin, because many people will stop here, and a lot of industries will use this word extra virgin to denote quality, but extra virgin does not tell you so many things about a really good quality olive oil. For example, it doesn't tell you if it's from one producer, or if it's a blend from 50 different countries, from 200 different types of producers. It doesn't tell you how fresh it is. It could be a blend from 3 different years. It doesn't tell you if the process has been burnt or not. So beyond extra virgin, make sure if you're buying a really good quality olive oil to look for a cold pressed or cold extraction. This tells you it hasn't been heated over 27 degrees, which means you preserve all the nutrients, the health benefits, the natural aromas, the flavors, and all these things. And after that, look at the harvest date, look at how fresh it is, look at the origin. So you see a protected origin, that's always better. And if it's organic, even better. But basically cold pressed, yeah. The main things that make an olive oil, a good quality olive oil, is first that it's something pleasant to eat. It can smell and taste like so many different things according to all kinds of places that it comes from or how it's been produced. If it's from Spain or Italy or Crete, if it's a Koroneiki or Tsunati, all this makes up for flavors of different, like you can have green grass in one olive oil and you can have nutty flavors in another one. It really depends, and this is part of the experience that you should be getting in a good quality olive oil. But most of the time, many people will see olive oil as something boring or just a fat that you use to dress something or fry in. Olive oil, it should be like a wine tasting where you really smell and taste something pleasant. So this is the most important part for me. Second is that it's very healthy. And to get all these antioxidants and health benefits and vitamins inside the olive oil, you have to make sure that it's cold pressed or cold extraction. Because if it's been heated throughout the whole process and washed with water, you're losing a lot of these nutrients that olive oil is naturally full of. It's considered a health supplement. It's so healthy. But most of the time it's been burnt. And very important, always look at the packaging. If you see an olive oil in a clear glass or a clear plastic bottle, even worse, you know that the person who has packaged it did not respect the product at all, because light, heat, and oxygen are the main enemies that no matter how perfect the oil was when it was produced, if you put it in a clear glass and it's affected by sunlight, in a matter of even a month, it's not the same. So dark glass bottle, tin is better than plastic, but always try to avoid the plastic ones. Yeah. So this process, it definitely takes much more time. So we produce about 1,000 kilos in a minimum 3 hours. In a modern factory, you can produce up to 10 tons in 1 hour. Second, stone mills are not really used anymore. Stone mills are not used. Instead of stone mills, you either have a big chopper or a big hammer that the negative side of this is that it often works in really high speed, and it can create a lot of friction, a lot of heat. And often if they really want to keep it cold pressed or cold extraction, they're adding cold water to it to cool it down, which then the water does something else. It just takes away some of the nutrient as well. And then the third is that in the modern factory, you rarely find a process that is not using water. In order to separate the paste without a press, so if you're not pressing the paste to get the juice out, you're gonna use a decanter, which puts water into the paste, so it thins it out and it makes it easier to separate. If you're adding water, what happens is a lot of the nutrients are water soluble, so they end up leaving with that water and all going into the wastewater. If you know what you're doing in the modern system, you can tweak the process to get a really good quality olive oil. But especially here in Crete, many of the factories, all they care about, like we said before, is the quantity and the bulk. So they'll just add a bunch of water and a lot of burning water as well. It's even worse. And they completely flush out anything good inside the oil. So this is the negative side. But there are some excellent oils coming out from the modern system as well. Not to say that we're good or they're bad. We just choose to do it the more natural way, the more sustainable way, because this works with half the energy than the modern factory, produce very minimal waste. So it makes sense to us. Yeah. The process I didn't finish completely, so all the juices that we've gathered in the back of the tank, so all the juices that are flowing from here, we gather it in the back of the press. There's some tanks. There, we leave it to separate naturally, so the oil will go to the top, the vegetable water will sit in the bottom. So we do a natural separation of the juices. And then the vegetable water, will pass it once through a centrifuge separator to get whatever might be left in there. And the olive oil from the top, we gather it just as it is. It's very naturally extracted. When the olive oil finally comes out, it's still very thick. And so sometimes you see on the label the word unfiltered. So we're unfiltered, which means that instead of passing it through filters right away when it first comes out, we leave it to settle naturally inside the holding tank. So it will settle, the sediment will go to the bottom, and then we take the clean quantity, put it in another tank, and from there we can start bottling, which all happens in the next room, but we've sort of shut it down because we've been bottling the last few days. It's a little bit messy in there. So,
how long does it take to separate?
A month.
A month? Oh wow.
A month, yeah. Because it's still cool.
Modern day, they just do it in a day through a filter?
So a filter will take, it will take a few hours to pass everything. Wow. Not to say again that filtering is bad. In fact, some people will say that filtering might improve the fruitiness of the oil, or it might help the shelf life of the oil because you don't have maybe any traces of sediment inside. In our first bottlings, you might see a little bit of sediment in the bottom of even though it's settled. But for us, it's also just because we've completely went back to the traditional process, the fact that it also has the texture of the old times, which is, it's a little bit more thick, and it coats like you'll see that if you swirl it in a glass, it coats the glass instead of just falling down. For us, that's also part of like what we like about the unfiltered oils. And it's just a more natural way to do it. We just like to do everything the more difficult way. Yeah. Okay, so we can go see the film upstairs that'll clarify everything, and then we'll have the tasting, and then if you have more questions, we'll talk about it. So we have 3 products. We have the classic extra virgin stone milled cold pressed, and then we have 2 flavors, one with lemons and one with bitter oranges. And the way we make these ones is that we take whole fruits, also our production, also organic, and we throw them into the stone mill when it's crushing the olives. So it's a natural way of flavoring, but you still keep the zestiness of the fruit, and you still get to taste the olive oil as well. So, since we're doing everything a little bit to show off, we're gonna do a little bit how we do the professional tasting way. How to taste an olive oil properly is you have to have it in a little cup. And you sort of warm it up with the one hand and then cup it with your other hand. So it's the complete opposite of wine. For wine, you're not supposed to touch the glass and change the temperature of what's inside. With olive oil, you want to heat it up a little bit with your hand so that you can get the aromas much better. So heat it up a little bit, heat it up, and wait until all the aromas are there. Heat it up. And then the first thing we're going to do is smell. We're going to smell it. And then, like I said before, depending on what variety it is, depending on how it's produced. For example, olive oil produced from stone mills is a little bit more sweet and non-bitter than the average Koroneiki that you'll taste maybe around here, because you don't end up completely pulverizing the pits and the bitter parts of the olives. Usually the olive oil that we produce here, because it's mostly from green olives, it has aromas of green grass, green almonds. This year is more herby, so we got more of the ripe olives in this year because of some weather conditions. So let's smell. So herbs, maybe some tomato. What do you think?
It's not a tomato.
Tomato.
Mm-hmm.
So eat something that's pleasant at least. So then we swirl it in a little bit and have another smell. And then when you sip it, it's kind of similar to wine. If you really want to taste it, you do a little bit of a sipping, like a little bit like that. And then the other parts are, if you feel the pepperiness of it, more as an aftertaste, then that's something positive. If it hits you right away, it's not usually a good sign. Maybe it's a sign that it might be burnt or something like that. But if it comes as a peppery aftertaste, then that's usually a sign of antioxidants inside the oil that it's there when the olive is green. So this is something positive. Nobody can tell you that this is the best olive oil in the world. If you don't like the flavors, or if it's too bitter, or it's too sweet for you, then you have to go to a different variety or different something else. So in the end of the day, it's up to you. But for the rest of the oil, if you don't want to do the cup, if it's too much for you, we have some bread right there, so you can taste. We have the extra virgin, the lemon, and the bitter orange. So go ahead and have a taste.